Hi there and welcome. I'm Lance King. I'd like to welcome you to my session on 2021 Educational Leadership. So subtitled ATL Skills and the All Blacks. So I'm going to use a sporting metaphor to get across some principles of leadership. And I see educational leadership not as just something that administrators show. I think that every teacher is an educational leader. I think that every student can be an educational leader. And so what I'm going to use is a sporting metaphor to talk about how principles of leadership can help with high achievement in a physical sporting field, but also how principles of leadership can be taught to students, and also how principles of leadership can be manifested by teachers and students themselves. So I hope you enjoy the next hour or so. I live in New Zealand, up here at the top of the world, and I've spent the last 35 years teaching. And I've spent the last 25 years teaching the skills of thinking and learning. I've worked in over 37 countries, I've worked in many IB schools, and over 250,000 students have been through my courses on thinking and learning, or what we call ATL skills. This is my website. You're welcome to access that. There's a lot of free resources for ATL there. This is my office where this presentation is being recorded at present, just a few days before the conference. I always find that pre-recording is probably the best way to get across a presentation because there's a lot to get through in a short time. That office is situated in my house, and my home is in Raglan on the west coast of the North Island of New Zealand. These are all my contact details, websites, email addresses, Twitter addresses, and my YouTube channel. If you're interested in getting in touch with me, I'd be really pleased to hear from you. Just take a snapshot of that right now and get in contact with me after this presentation or at any time. I think the first point I want to make is about changes to education brought about by the COVID pandemic in 2020 to 2021. I think the critical thing to think about is about what hasn't changed. You probably think that almost everything hasn't changed, but I'll bet there's at least one thing that hasn't changed, and that is what to teach. I imagine that you still have to teach the same material that you had to teach before the pandemic, and I imagine that you probably still have to teach the same amount of material. I'll bet no one came to you in like March or April last year and said, hey, look, we recognise that it's just really difficult to teach, so for this year we're only going to teach half the stuff. We're only going to get across half the content. I bet no one did that, did they? And yet what has changed? Well, every single thing else, hasn't it? Especially the how to teach. Every teacher, I'm sure, is learned new ways of teaching, learned new ways of getting material across, learned new ways of designing and presenting information. And how to teach and how to learn has changed dramatically. Also, I guess, where to learn, and I guess in some respects where to teach, with whom to learn and with whom to teach. All these aspects of education have changed remarkably in the last 12 months. And I think this has caused a great deal of concern in students and in teachers, and the pressures that have been on teachers for the last 12 months and are still continuing in many countries are incredible and hopefully will never ever be repeated. But those pressures mean that a lot of people have been suffering, and their emotional needs haven't necessarily been catered for. And I think there is a real need in the educational community now for resilience, for courage, for determination, and for self-motivation, all the affective and character-based aspects of education. And so I think there's a real need out there for a model of leadership which focuses on the strength of character. And that's one of the things I want to talk about. A model of leadership which focuses on succeeding against the odds. And a model of rational leadership and good evidence-based decision making. And this is what I hope to bring to you. And I want to do it through the model of the All Blacks. Now, a lot of you, I'm sure, know nothing about rugby or nothing about the All Blacks, and that's fine. That's excellent, in fact, because I don't want to be talking to people who know everything that I'm going to say. So if you don't understand anything about it, that's great. Rugby is just another game. It's just another team sport, the object of which is to score points against the other team, obviously. But one thing about the All Blacks, the All Blacks is the New Zealand national rugby team, and that team has had a remarkable success record. Rugby has been around for nearly 120 years, and in that 120 years the All Blacks have managed to post a 71.4, I believe, percent winning record, which is pretty good. But rugby also used to be a completely amateur sport, but in 1995 rugby went professional all across the world. And the All Blacks have managed in that time, since 1995, to post an 84.2% win record. Now, rugby is not something that's just played in New Zealand. It is not played in lots of countries, but it is played very extensively in England, in Wales, in Ireland, in France, in Italy, in South Africa, in Australia, in New Zealand, now in America and in Canada, in Argentina, and in many other countries. And Scotland, I missed out Scotland, didn't I? In Scotland as well. And so it is a sport that's played a lot. I believe it's being played by about 120 million people in the world. And for any team to post an 84.2% win record is quite astonishing. But it's not just astonishing in rugby. In fact, the All Blacks record is the best win record of any professional team in any sport worldwide. And that, I think, is completely astonishing. And you've got to ask why? How come? Because the All Blacks, look at them, they're the guys in the black on the right hand side here. I'll show you a little bit of their play in a minute, and you'll see they're not bigger than anyone else, they're not faster than anyone else, they're not stronger than anyone else, they're not more powerful than anyone else, they don't have better skills than anyone else, they don't have better training than anyone else. How come they're so good? Let me just show you a little of the All Blacks and see what you think. So the aim of the exercise is to take that oval ball and place it on the ground behind the back line of the previous team. And the All Blacks seem to be just a little bit better than many other teams in doing that. When you do this, when you place the ball over the line, it's called a try, which is an interesting word, isn't it? It's not a goal or a touchdown, it's a try. Referee plays advantage. TJ Penalona scores the try for the All Blacks. Good Reed, close over. So enough of that. So you may not be interested in rugby, it's perfectly fine. If you're more interested in American football, it's really interesting because the college football in America is really big at the moment, and the top team is the Clemson Tigers. And the coach, Dabo Swinney, is, interestingly enough, he attributed at least some of the success of the Clemson Tigers to lessons in sports management and leadership that he learnt from the All Blacks. So there you go. All sorts of people are using this as a model. And my question was, how come the All Blacks are so good and have produced such an amazing record? Well, if it's not physical, it's not skills, it's got to be mental training. And that's what I want to focus on. And I attribute it all to this man, Gilbert Enoka. Now, Gilbert Enoka has been the All Blacks mental coach for the last 17 years. And recently he's kind of semi-retired and he started writing about his experiences with the All Blacks. And he's brought up these three key principles that he's used with the All Blacks to help them produce an amazing performance. And I think they're exactly the principles that we need for good leadership in the educational world. And I also think they're principles which can be taught to students, and I think they're principles that we can use in our own lives. So I'd like to bring you those three principles. So the first principle is to stay in the moment, which means what is happening right here, right now. And in a sporting context, this makes sense, doesn't it? Because if you're playing a sport and you're engaged with a play that just happened, whether it was a good play or a poor play, you're not going to be focused on what is right in front of you. And if you're engaged mentally with a play that is yet to happen, the next play, you're not going to be focused on what you need to do right here, right now. And so staying in the moment is absolutely crucially important for all sports. But it's also crucially important for all forms of mental health, is to be focused right now. I don't know what you're like, but certainly I find there are times when mentally I'm completely engaged with something that happened yesterday, or something that happened last week, or something that might have happened 10 years ago, which keeps me from focusing and concentrating on the moment. Or I might be focused on something that's about to happen, or something that might happen in a week's time, or something that might happen in a year's time, which again keeps me from focus and concentrating on the present moment. And I think helping students to learn how to focus and concentrate on the present moment is absolutely vital, especially in a world of multitasking, in a world of devices, in a world of total distraction. Learning how to zoom in and focus and concentrate is a key skill, which these days is brought about through what is called mindfulness and meditation training. And I think both these things are absolutely worthwhile to teach to students. And I've got a little video clip of a successful program from the United States, which I'd like to show you. So have a look at this.
So nobody likes you, ugly ass.
No one likes you. Bitch ass like Rugby.
What
is going on?
Your backpack?
Connor's backpack.
Excuse me. Go sit in the back. Oh, I've given up.
We're that bad. They gotta bring a TV show about us.
I had a parent-teacher conference. The teachers were talking bad about me.
The principal said that if the teacher sent her to the office one more time, she had to change the school.
Sometimes I don't really listen.
Just a problem kid.
I really don't feel like my parents can understand me.
No, that's not. Yes, Mr. Allen.
I am here from Mindful Schools. We go into classrooms and teach something called mindfulness.
I was like, get out of here.
I don't know about the class.
People will like make fart noises and stuff.
Can I have everybody's eyes up here?
It's boring and it's stupid.
Keep your attention with me.
You gotta make stuff entertaining.
You will not be entertained 24 hours a day of your whole life.
Monica, go outside. I know you don't like expectations.
I do, but I don't like yours.
For him, that he has a chance and opportunity to be somebody here.
I want to prove to them that I'm changing my life.
Repeat silently in your mind, I wish for myself to be happy.
Let's like.
So that's Room to Breathe. You can find the full video on YouTube if you're interested. And obviously in very, very difficult situations with children who have a lot of things going on for them, obviously for at least some of those students, learning how to adopt and practice mindfulness practices, which are akin to meditation, was obviously a very, very useful strategy. And why do we need this? Well, the reason is, of course, mental health. But I mean, I guess one question is this a concern for educational leadership? You know, should we be concerned about mental health? Is that a job for schools, or is it a job for parents? Well, I think in today's high stress, high achievement environment, I think it is actually a vital task for schools. And mental health is a huge global issue. Have a look at some statistics. In the United States from 2005 to 2017, the 18 to 25-year-olds, serious psychological distress increased by 71%. And depression increased by 52%. 11% of 12 to 17-year-olds suffer depression. In Europe, 2018 is when I got these stats from. 17 million aged 10 to 19 years, around 20% have mental, developmental and substance use disorders. Suicide is a leading cause of death amongst adolescents in low and middle income countries, and the second leading cause in high income countries in the European Union. In China, 5.5% of 14 to 35-year-olds suffer severe anxiety. 21.4% are depressed. In the UK, from 2004 to 2017, of 5 to 15-year-olds, emotional disorders including anxiety and depression increased by 49%. 5 to 19-year-olds, 8.1% report an emotional disorder. And these are not just isolated statistics coming from the most advanced countries. I think every country is suffering the same kind of effects. In New Zealand, we have the highest teenage suicide rate in the world. It's an appalling statistic and something that we need to do something about. And I think education can play a huge part in that. And why is it? Well, I guess it's something to do with the pressures of modern life. It's got to also be something to do with all the changes that we've seen in the last 20 years. The biggest of which, of course, has been the advance of the internet. Let's look at some quick digital statistics around the world. The world global population, these are statistics from January 2019, so they're a little out of date, but they're the best I could find at the time. There are about 7.7 billion people, of whom 4.4 billion are online, of whom 3.3 billion are online on their phone. Digital growth, population is only growing at 1.1% per year, but internet users is growing at 9.1%, and mobile social media users is growing at 10%. And this is the critical area, isn't it? Social media, 42% of the world's population are active mobile social media users. It seems astonishing, doesn't it? Our mobile share of total internet time has been increasing dramatically over the years. Mobile data consumption is now into exponential growth, and our social media users over time has obviously gone up. And I guess this is the most critical one. This is platforms, and this shows that as of January 2019, Facebook had 2.8 billion people on one platform. And this, I think, is wonderful because it means people can connect with people all around the world. But it is also dangerous simply because of the possibility of manipulation of data, the possibility of getting people hooked into that echo chamber effect that everyone's talking about these days, where people just get fed the information that supports their point of view and things that reinforce what they already think, which enables all forms of extreme viewpoint to actually get the feeling that they're mainstream because everything they see supports their completely crazy off-the-wall ideas. And this is dangerous, I think. And we are all enrolled in this experiment of social media and this experiment of being internet connected 24/7. And it's an experiment in information processing that we kind of never really signed up for, but we're all very, very much addicted to these days, aren't we? It's an interesting thing. But getting back to Gilbert Enoka and principles of leadership, we've had the stay in the moment principle. I think that's very useful. The second principle is to avoid judgment. Now, this relates to social media, of course, because of the toxic effects of social media comparison and judgment. So many students, it seems to me, and probably exacerbated by the COVID pandemic, are in a situation where they feel completely isolated, and whilst their social media connections are giving them great community and giving them great connection and giving them the feeling that they are not so alone, also the effect is of comparison and judgment, isn't it? It looks like every single person is having a better day than you. And this is a really difficult thing for a lot of children to handle. And so I think there is a real need to teach children some key social media skills, especially in the two key areas of social media identity and security. I always try to bring out two key points with students when I'm working with them on this topic. And the first point that they often don't realise is that everything they ever post is there forever. You know, even if they delete it, even if it was unfortunate, even if they didn't mean to say that and they put it up and then shortly thereafter they deleted it, it is still there. Someone with the right skills can find it if they wish. And unfortunately that creates, or that goes together with every other piece of data that they post to make their social media identity. And the second thing is that if the service is free, then they need to realize that they are the product, that all of their data is being sold. And not only being sold, it's also being used to manipulate their attention. That whole, as I've mentioned, that whole idea of being enveloped in an internet environment which only reinforces your own opinions of the world is not a particularly healthy environment to be in. So one of the people who is focused on this quite a lot is a wonderful researcher named Gabor Mate. I don't know if you're familiar with Gabor, but he worked for 25 years in a drug addiction centre in Vancouver, and one of the key things that he noticed about all the people that he ever worked with, serious drug addicts, was problems with attachment. And attachment and social media and internet use seem to be related. And it's something to do with orientation. 50 years ago when I was young, our orientation as a child was always towards adult role models. We had people historically or at present that we could look to in order to find a behavioural compass, in order to work out how to operate, how to behave in different situations. We would look to adult heroes. But you see, these days, most young people orientation is not vertical, it is horizontal. And most young people are now looking to same age peers and similar age influences to use as a behavioural compass and to use as role models. And I have to say that a 14-year-old boy looking to other 14-year-old boys to find out how to act in different situations is using all the wrong models to actually work out his own behaviour. And using peers as a behavioural compass is a very unfortunate thing and leads students down all sorts of difficult pathways. And I think that there is a real need amongst young people to realise that, in fact, utilising role models who have much more experience and age than them is actually a very useful thing. And many parents are noticing this dissociation from their own children, where the only thing the children know for sure is that everything anyone over 30 says is wrong. And that's really unfortunate. Of course, through the internet and social media, they can gather the strength of a like-minded group, but there is also the danger, as I've mentioned, of an echo chamber of comparison and judgment. So I think there's some social media skills that all children need to learn. And through ATL skills, we can teach them these skills. Some key things about identity, virtues and values. Children need to learn exactly who they are and what their character is made of and what they consider to be their highest virtues and values, who they are and who they want to be, which then helps them to realise the difference between their reputation and their character. Because, of course, reputation tends to be what social media is based on, whereas character is not necessarily the same. But I mean, that's one of the key lessons for students to learn about setting up their social media identity, is to try and focus that identity on their strengths, on their goals, and try and make their own online identity exemplify their real, true values. They need to find positive, inspirational adults to follow, to actually be careful about making ethical choices about likes. If they set up all the people that they're connected to inspire them and help them to achieve their goals, then that would be a really useful way to utilise social media. And obviously, it's going to be important to set up and maintain strong relationships that exist both on and offline. It is the offline relationships that actually give you the other parts of communication. You can't get the read on communication, on body language, on tone. All you can get is the read on words when you're engaged in social media. I mean, it was maybe 40 years ago that Mehrabian came up with the statistics that in any communication between human beings, 7% of the communication was in the words. As I recall, it was 8% of the communication was in the tone, and 85% of any communication was in the body language, was in what you are reading about that person as to who that person really is. And of course, it's that emotional connection between people, which is totally missing in any online communication. And I think this is what Gabor Mate is talking about. Emotional attachment is the most important thing in any human communication. And we've got to make sure that young people are getting that connection as well as online connection. And to achieve that, I guess the idea of supporting the idea with your students of encouraging them to take a digital day off. You know, how many of us can do that? How many of us do that? Take 24 hours without your phone, put it in the drawer, turn it off and never look at it for 24 hours. Could you do that? What about a complete day off from digital devices? What about no phone, no laptop, no tablet, no computer and no television? Just for 24 hours, just one day. Maybe one day per month. The interesting thing is when you do that, you actually have to make more emotional connection with other human beings because you're taken away from a digital connection. Therefore, the real, physical, in-person connection becomes so much more important. I encourage you to try that one day per month. Give it a try. And here's a good quote from John Wooden, which is, be more concerned with your character than your reputation, because your character is what you really are, while your reputation is merely what others think you are. And getting back to Gilbert Enoka, how does this work in a sporting context? Well, it's about judging yourself against others. Like if you are playing in a team sport and you're judging yourself as better than the person on your right or better than the person on your left, then your ego is going to get in the way of your performance. Similarly, if you're underrating yourself, if you're thinking you're not as capable as that person or not as capable as that person, you're once again going to affect your performance and you're going to affect your confidence. The important thing is to avoid judgment and to rely on those people as much as you can and try and take the ego out of sport. And the same thing I think applies to leadership. And one of the greatest challenge for most leaders is to take their ego out of their performance as a leader and to learn to listen more than you speak is a key characteristic of leadership that I think can be taught to all students and also to all educational leaders in any context. But moving on, what's the third factor? Well, the third factor from Gilbert Enoka is simply to control what you can control. Now, this seems completely obvious, isn't it? That obviously you have to control what you can control. But just think about it. Think about it from a school point of view. Think about it from a student's point of view. I mean, think about it, a student in your class. In your class, what do your students have control over? Do they have control over what they're taught? Or where they're taught, or when they're taught, or how they're taught, or who sets the tests, or who marks the tests? Of course not. They have no control over any of these things, do they? And the unfortunate result of that, for some students anyway, is a feeling of helplessness, a feeling that there is nothing in their control and that they're completely at the mercy of an unforgiving system. And this unfortunately leads to very, very poor performance in students. They become passive. How many of you have passive students? How many of you have noticed that the longer students stay in school-based education, the more passive they get? It's certainly not a universal characteristic, but I certainly have seen it in many countries. So I think one of the roles of ATL is to show students that they actually do have some control over their own success. Because of course there are two factors that are in students' control. And the first is how much effort they put in. And as teachers, we're always trying to get students to put in more effort, aren't we? And that is completely in their control. But the other, I think, even more important factor is how they apply that effort, which is what strategies and techniques do they use in order to achieve their academic performance. Just simple things like managing their time and their tasks. Are they good at that? Have they learned a really good model for that? Are they doing it well and conscientiously? What about self-motivation, perseverance, concentration, overcoming procrastination? Those are skills that students can learn which make a huge difference to completion of tasks and the depth of performance they put into tasks. Obviously, how to set up good digital collaborations and study groups, how to research well, how to verify, validate information, how to recognize perspective and bias in the information they get, how to make good summary notes from texts, text, from podcasts, from teachers' presentations, from video presentations, and how to build good evidence-based arguments. And these are just some of the key skills that students need in order to perform well academically. And these things are all in a student's control. And this is where ATL skills are so important, because through gaining proficiency in ATL skills, what happens to students is they improve their performance in all their academic subjects. And so I always try and sell the idea of ATL skills to students from the point of view of gaining control over the factors that they can control in order to become better self-managed learners. Now, I think there's a set of skills which are essential for effective self-management, whether we're talking self-management at school in class, whether we're talking self-management in any kind of group situation, or whether we're talking self-management in a remote learning context. The skills remain the same. And here is the set of skills. I won't go through them. They're pretty much what I've already just said. These are the key skills that every student needs in order to become an effective, remote, self-managed learner. In order to help you as a teacher to get these skills across to your students, we've actually created a free resource online for you to do so. And I want to show you that right now. So, this is called Lalatet. It's available at lalatet.com. And the site looks like this. And in here we have a free portal of skills, exercises for students to do to learn all the skills of remote learning. So if you're interested in accessing this, you go to lalatet.com and you sign up for all your students and all your teachers to gain access to the remote learning portal. And when you get there, it looks like this. So here is the core ATL skills for remote self-managed learning. Now, in order to understand how to operate it, you can go up here to what's called the help library. If you go into the help library, what you'll find is you'll find some documentation on how to use it, but you'll also find some videos. These are 1 to 2 minute videos which will help you understand how to utilize the entire system. There's a video for students and a video for teachers. Then there's some specific videos on how to use, how to do your page navigation, how to use the help library, how to get across the idea of the importance of ATL skills for teachers, for students, for schools as a whole, and also for parents. I've put in some ideas on how to get the message across about the importance of these skills for parents to use. And then there's a little video on the importance of assessment. And then there's also some specific videos on how to utilize the Lalatet system to help students learn how to design and deliver presentations, write business reports, write scientific reports, overcome procrastination, time management for assignment deadlines, time management for daily tasks, setting up digital groups for remote learning, etc., etc. So it's all there. Hopefully there's enough instruction there to enable you to understand how to use it. It's actually very, very simple. You just open up each category, and within each category is a list of strands. And if you're interested in a particular strand, you click on that particular strand and it opens up until you get the actual exercises. Each exercise has a mastery statement at the top. It's got some discussion about it, and then it's got tasks for students to do. I've filled out this one as if I was a student. It's a time management exercise that asks them to list all the tasks they've got and then make decisions about each task's importance and each task's urgency, and then analyze them on that basis, and then work out some strategies to enable them to overcome pressure and stress. Very, very simple. One key thing you need to realize is that all these exercises are now available in 4 different languages. That's English. You can switch at any moment to French if you wish. You can switch at any moment to Vietnamese if you wish. And you can switch at any moment to Chinese if you wish. And so all these exercises are available in all those languages. So we are adding more languages daily at the moment, but at the moment there's at least 4 languages that is available in. And if I was to use this myself, I'd need to switch it back to English. And so there's a lot of information there. There's a lot of good exercises for students in all these categories of study skills, of character skills, of metacognitive skills, of language-based skills, of media skills, group skills, research skills, and critical thinking skills. In there are actually 19 different strands that can be used by you to help your students to achieve their goals of effective remote self-managed learning. So feel free to access that. It's kind of like what I've been doing in the last 12 months to try and help relieve some of the pressure on students in this COVID environment. So getting back to Gilbert Enoka, these are the 3 key principles that we can take from the mental training of the All Blacks and teach to our students. I think they're actually vital. But how does this apply to leadership? Well, I think in the last 12 months we've had wonderful examples of leadership that we need to use in the next however many years to demonstrate to students how to lead and also how not to lead. From these 5 leaders in particular, we have seen examples of buffoonery, arrogance, ignorance, condescension, superstition, and a denial of the principles of evidence-based decision-making. These 5 men have overseen the deaths of, to date, 1,181,000 people. And it's an interesting question to consider. How many of those people would not have died if those 5 men had have utilised good evidence-based leadership? And I think that you may not agree with me, but certainly we have seen good leadership in some places, and I'm lucky enough to have had this woman here as the leader of New Zealand, who to me has exemplified good evidence-based and courageous and resilient leadership. And so I guess I want to finish off with a little quote from Abraham Lincoln, which says, nearly all men can stand adversity, but if you want to test a man's character, give him power. And that's what happened to people, astonishing power, which in many, many cases they used very, very poorly. So what are the key principles that we can rely on in terms of, that we can take from the All Blacks and utilise as a leadership model? Well, the first one is obviously very focused on sport, but it is to be fiercely competitive on the field and humble and self-effacing off the field. I think all leaders could learn something from that. Second principle is to hold yourself to a higher standard of performance than anyone else ever will hold you. The third one is every day ask, how can I be the best I can be? And the last one is simply to listen more than you speak. I think those are key principles that we could all use, that we could teach to all our students, and we could actually exemplify in our leadership in everyday life. So I hope you've enjoyed that. Thank you. I'll be available for Q&A for the next 10 minutes or so.